In verse 24, it says, consider how to stimulate one another unto love and good works. The King James says, provoke one another unto good love and good works. Or to motivate one another. To provide, the definition says, someone with a motive for doing something. Well, we could take off in 100 directions in how we need to be motivated. The next verse in Hebrews chapter 10 talks about assembling ourselves together, but not as the manner of some is, which is forsaking that assembling. But that's not the direction which we're going. We're talking about motivation, and Jesus, of course, is the best example of it. In 2 Corinthians 8 and verse 9, though he was rich, he became poor. We talk about motivation for giving. And there's more to giving than out of your pocketbook or your checkbook. So many ways in which we can give of our time. We talk about lending a shoulder or a helping hand. And our groups that send cards. That's motivating. If you've received some of those cards, if you've been sick or experienced death in your family and you receive a card with so many well wishes, it motivates you to keep on. And that's what we're here for, as brothers and sisters, young and old, to motivate. Jesus, the perfect example, took on the form, Philippians chapter 2, of a bond servant. You see what the definition of a bond servant is? Without wages. You're working, but with no wages. He lowered himself. He humbled himself. He had nowhere to lay his head. Foxes and birds in our trees around our house, sometimes in our eaves and wherever they can find a hole. God has provided for them food, shelter, but he had nowhere to lay his head. Humbled himself in obedience even to the death on the cross. He gave of himself. In 2 Corinthians chapter 8, beginning in verse 1, I hope that you all can read these verses. Paul motivates the brethren at Corinth when he says, moreover, brethren, we make known to you the grace of God bestowed on the churches of Macedonia, that in a great trial of affliction, and I'll tell you what, we don't know. We have no idea what they are going through. We might see it in other countries, what people are being driven out without food, without clothing, without water, without shelter. Our brethren went through things like this. They were the offscouring. They were hated, as Jesus said they would be, because he was. That in a great trial of affliction, the abundance of their joy and their deep poverty abounded in the riches of their liberality. Even though they did not have, they gave. For I bear witness that according to their ability, yes, and beyond their ability, they were freely willing, imploring us with much urgency that we would receive the gift and the fellowship of the ministering to the saints. And not only as we had hoped, but they first gave themselves. There is where our giving begins. When you, young people, you begin with yourself. Many of you are finding out what it's like to make money. And you're also finding out what it may be like when the devil tempts you with selfishness. It's easy to see in others, but maybe not so much in self. ISH. Look at these brethren. They did not have, but they begged to give. Another version says in verse 4, begging us with much urging for the favor of participation in the support of the saints. Please, we don't have much, but boy, whatever we can scrounge up, we are going to give. Along with Jesus, the great sacrifice that he made. In verse 6 of 2 Corinthians 8, he turns back to the Corinthians. So we urge Titus, just as he had earlier made a beginning, to bring also to the completion this act of grace on your part. After he has told them about the Macedonian brethren that were so poor and so in so much trial. Let's just say we were the church at Corinth, and we hear about this other congregation in another country that does not have, but they couldn't wait to give. You know what they knew? It was more blessed to give, didn't they? We need to find that out if we don't know it already. But since, verse 7, you excel in everything, in faith, in speech, in knowledge, in complete earnestness, and in love, we have kindled in you. See that you also excel in this grace of giving. Now, Corinthian church, what has he just done for you? He's given you an example of Jesus here in 2 Corinthians chapter 8, a little later on in the chapter. And here he's given you an example of the church at Macedonia and says we need to be like them. And he says you can do it because you excel in all of these areas, and I know you will in this one too. What would that do to you? I know you can do it. I know you can do it. And to know what Paul had been through, wouldn't that encourage you to give? Saw some statistics. If you gave whatever you give every Lord's Day for 50 years, if it was $10, you'd give $26,000 in 50 years. Wow! Okay, break it down to 1 year. How much is it? You math magicians? A little over $500? Is that correct? A year? And how much are we bringing in the richest, wealthiest country in the world? If you gave $20 a week, see how it escalates? On and on. In 50 years. How are we doing? How am I doing? Let me ask you, are you satisfied with your giving? Better yet, is God? Is God satisfied with it? Well, people want to know how much should we tithe. And I hear that on radio. These preachers talk about tithing. They never forget. They want people to tithe. That's the old law, isn't it? Our giving comes, as theirs did, as well, from their heart. You think God doesn't know every Lord's Day what you give? Just like Jesus when he sat and watched at the treasury and watched the wealthy come and drop their wealth in. And the widow, he knew she was a widow. He knew how much she gave. And he knows how much I give. And he knows if I'm giving as I'm prospered, and if I enjoy giving and wish I could give more, or begrudge every last penny of it. Have you gotten a raise at work? Have you worked overtime and thought, boy, I made a whole lot of money, double time? Who gave you the ability to do that? Who gave you the air to breathe, the health to move, to do that? And who loved you so much to leave heaven where he had not a place to rest his head? You know who needs this? Me. And I hope you're saying the same thing. Have you given a raise to the Lord? How long has it been, the song says? How long has it been? Am I satisfied with what I gave 20, 30, 40 years ago? I have increased in my wealth. Have I increased in helping the Lord? He doesn't need my money, but we can use it to, as these good elders do, to send that money far and wide. We've been lingering around 3,000 in all. Isn't that awesome? Can we grow in that? Are you on the inside shaking your head this way? Well, $5 extra that I could get. You know what? If we all, each giver, gave $5 more, would you starve if you, are you that close to poverty? Me neither. How are we doing? How are we doing, brethren? How are we doing? Have we been motivated? Jesus was motivated to give, wasn't he? Because it was all of our souls that he was after. And we're after souls as well. And this church can grow financially and help others financially, help other preachers, help brethren in dire straits when the Philippines and other places get devastated by these horrible storms. And here we sit so blessed, air-conditioned in the summer, warm in the winter, comfort everywhere. Am I like Freddie the freeloader, expect everybody else to do all the giving while I enjoy the good preaching and the good Bible classes and somebody else to pay for it? Let's be motivated tonight to think about it. Husbands and wives, talk about it. Young people, how am I doing? How am I doing? You start out selfish, you'll stay selfish. And you want to marry somebody that's a good Christian and faithful, they won't want to marry you because of your selfishness. They won't want to fight you every Lord's Day over our contribution. Let's be motivated to give in every way of our time, of our abilities, and let's improve in every way. If you're here tonight, a lesson not designed to teach you how to become a Christian, but one indeed that can motivate us. And when we are motivated, we can conquer the world. Look what 12 apostles did. As they were commanded to go, they went. Paul tells us in Colossians 1, 2 times that their mission was accomplished. Let's accomplish our mission. Let's be motivated in every way of life. If you're motivated tonight to respond to the Lord's invitation to have your sins washed away in the blood of the Lamb, won't you do that? If you've fallen away and need to return, won't you return right now while we stand, while we sing?